What's up, guys? We're looking at Minos Strategos today. Brain Good Game's fourth game, and in my opinion, their best game. And I'll talk a little bit about why I think it's their best in a minute. But for now, kind of get you acquainted with the rules and whatnot, so you can kind of understand my review a bit better. All right. So, well, all right. So yeah, I already played this match like usual for this channel, but basically the goal of the game here is you're trying to use your stones, okay, the little circles on the board, to score points by capturing and holding temples, which are the little outlined squares on the board, right? And so there are enemy units which follow basic movements I'll talk about later, and they are trying to do the same thing basically, okay? And you can kill each other by moving into their space, or vice versa. If they move into your space, they kill you, right? So you get a point every time you place or move a stone into a temple, and you also get a point for every, so see, those two stones just gave me 2 points, and you also get a point for every stone that survives your enemy's turn, right? And so the enemy's scoring works the same way, and I'm basically just racing the enemies to my score goal before they get to their score goal. All right, instead of the normal turn counter that Brain Good games have. Okay, so there's a timer up here, a little turn timer, so that's kind of new. But anyway, but the main meat of the game, well, each turn you can place or move a stone, but the main meat of the game is playing cards. So in addition to placing or moving, you also play 1 card per turn, usually. Okay, so some of the cards just have a simple line of text on them, like move 3 or spawn 2. Okay, so that's kind of straightforward. Like move 3 just gives you 3 movements, 3 stone movements. Spawn 2 just lets you spawn 2 stones. All right. Okay. So something that may surprise you about that though is move. There's 2 types of movement. There's move and then there's attack move. Okay, so you can't attack an enemy with a move. You can just move around. And then with spawning, you also can't attack an enemy with spawning. And you can't spawn on top of these little totems, which are just like power-ups that I'll explain later. So see, I just placed this stone here so I could move on to that little lightning bolt totem. But the more complex and more interesting cards, and what make this game kind of special, are these ones with the patterns on them here. And so when you click on a card with the pattern, you can then move the pattern around, kind of like a wind pattern in skyboats, okay? And you can move it around and rotate it on the grid. But you usually have to match a certain pattern of stones on the grid in order to activate the pattern, okay? So the green spaces on your card indicate how you have to match stones on the grid. So for instance, I'm about to use this maneuver card to match, and I match these 2 green stones on the maneuver card with these 2 stones on the board, and that let me activate the whole pattern. And so the red parts of the pattern are attacks. And so there was a Minotaur here, but then the red attack killed it. And then also, some of the red spots have circles underneath. So that you see the center red spot of Double Spear has a circle, but the red spot of Discover does not. And so when it has a circle underneath, it means you spawn a stone immediately after attacking. So that's how I got my stone on this space, which I scored a point for. And then the third kind of attack is the ranged attack. So when you have the arrow here, like on Double Spear, either end of Double Spear, that means it just attacks outward in that direction to the edge of the board. Okay, and so a lot of the cards with patterns also have text on them. Okay, so if the text is below the pattern, like it is in these 2 cards, with these 2 cards, then you apply the text after you activate the pattern. If it's above the pattern, then you apply the text beforehand. Right. So, talk a little bit more about how the enemy movement works. It's pretty simple. So, the main enemy type is the Minotaurs, and so they're always facing a temple, or they're in a temple, and they move towards the temple they're facing one space per turn, and once they reach the temple, then they stop. Okay, and they just sit there scoring points, right? If another Minotaur moves on top of them while they're in the temple, then they merge and they both score points. Okay, and you can tell how many are merged together by they'll have a number on the bottom right. So this Minotaur up here has a 2 on it, and so that means every time it takes or holds a temple, it'll score 2 points instead of 1, right? And so kind of a similar thing is going on with this Titan's head down here, but I'll get into talk about it a little more in a second. So you've got your normal Minotaur. Oh, and whenever you kill a Minotaur, it doesn't just disappear, it respawns immediately somewhere on the edge of the board, like you just saw. Okay, and they'll always respawn in line with a temple. They're always moving straight towards a temple. Okay, so the normal Minotaurs are the brown ones, but then there are Plague Minotaurs, which are colored black, and what they do is whenever you attack them, or whenever they die, they explode and will kill all units that are adjacent to them, friendly or enemy. Okay, and then in addition to the Plague Minotaurs and the normal Minotaurs, each game you have a Titan, which I just killed the Titan there. In this game, there's 3 types of Titans right now, and in each game you only get one of them. So in this one, we have the Serpent. Okay, it's just like a purple thing. It's like spans multiple tiles. It has a dinosaur head and whatnot. And so, but what it does is it can eat units. It can eat friendly units or your units. Okay, and so when it does that, it gets longer, and it also levels up as if it was stacking, so then it can score more points. So it can score as many points as it has body segments, basically. So if it moves and eats this stone here, then it will grow a new body segment, and it will also start scoring 3 points instead of 2. And so you can only kill it by attacking its tail at the back. Okay, so its head and body spaces are just impassable. Right, and so the last thing to talk about are these little special things that they're called totems. You can pick them up on the board, and there's not one on the board right now because I just picked one up, but there's basically always one on the board unless you just picked it up, basically. And what they are is they're just one-time use abilities, and you can use them whenever you want, so you never have to discard them or whatever. So some of them are pretty useful. So yeah, that's basically all. I mean, that's not all the rules, but that's a basic understanding of how this game works. And so why do I think it's special? Why do I think it's better than the other Brain Good games? Okay, so I've played all the Brain Good games. I played Skyboats for like around 7 to 10 hours, and then I played Militia for a couple hours, and then I didn't play much Axes and Acres, but I did play a little bit, and I watched some videos and read some guides and whatnot. So I think I have a somewhat informed opinion on all their games, and I think one of the problems with Axes and Acres and Skyboats, I think they kind of have a similar problem that this game avoids, is each of the, and I'm primarily speaking about skyboats here because, again, I haven't played much Axes and Acres, but I think this problem applies in both cases. But in each of those games, like, all of your actions are like really small and granular, okay, and they don't have much meaning on their own, okay. They don't take on meaning until you see them in the context of a larger or a longer chain of small actions, okay. So you don't know which way you should move your skyboat until you know, like, what good you're going to pick up and what city you're going to and what contracts you're going to fill and all that. And so it leads to some sort of tedious look ahead problems where you kind of have to just sit there and like find these long chains of events, okay. But in contrast, I like to call this dichotomy look ahead versus look around for moves, okay. And so I think this game and also Auro are more look around than look ahead, and I think that's good. And so what I mean by that is, like in this game, in both this game and Auro, there's like, you have a lot of potential moves, and very short sequences of them have very tangible meanings to you, like tangible value to you. So a single move in this game can kill an enemy actor and pick up a totem and put a stone in position for a pattern you're going to use next turn, or put a stone in position to take or defend a temple or stuff like that. So it's like each move can do a lot of things, and I think that's another thing too. Like both in this game and Auro, like a bunch of your basic actions like do a lot of things at once. They're not so granular. Like this card right here attacks and places 2 stones at once in a particular pattern, it's like so a lot more like you get a lot more situations where like you do like you're doing multiple things at once, basically. Like you're not just doing like a long sequence of small granular actions. You're doing like complex things instead of long strings of small things, basically, is one way to put it. But then also this game I think just has a better information horizon. So like you draw 2 cards every turn, and that has a big impact on a huge impact on what you can do. So pretty good information horizon in my opinion. The only random information on the board is when you kill the minotaurs and they respawn. But it feels like enough. Like I don't really feel myself doing a whole bunch of look ahead. But then also I think it's better than Militia, because in Militia you have like 3 units, okay? And there's a ton of enemy units. And there's a lot of enemy units in this game too. But in Militia, the enemies have like a bunch of kind of crazy, not too crazy, but a bunch of different attack patterns, right? And so there's a lot of ways you can get attacked in Militia. And since you only have 3 units in Militia, if one of them dies, you're kind of like, if one dies on accident, you're kind of screwed. So the result of that is a big part of Militia is just proofreading your moves to make sure that you didn't miss something and one of your pieces isn't going to die next turn, right? So that happens a lot. Is you just like you make a move, you didn't see that dude that can warp across the screen, who happens to be right next to or within attack range of one of your units, and then boom, one of your 3 units is dead, and you have like 2/3 the options you used to. So, but in this game, I think this game kind of avoids that problem in 2 ways. For one, the enemy movement is way more predictable. Okay, so they just move 1 space per turn in a straight line. And then 2, and when they respawn, they spawn on the edge, so it's not, it can't really shock you too bad. But, and then also, like, there's just, you have a bunch more pieces, and none of them are vitally important. So, like, if you accidentally have a piece get killed, it's not a big deal at all. You have a bunch of pieces. Okay? So, it avoids that proofreading problem. But then, also, like, I just think it's kind of, I think also, like, I think it's also better than Militia in kind of the same way I was talking about earlier, where you have, like, your moves are just, like, more complex and doing more things at once. Whereas in Militia, it's kind of also, it's not as granular, I don't think, but it is, I think it's more granular than in Minos Strategos. So, but yeah, I really like it actually. I think it's one of the Minos Strategos, that is. I think it's one of the best games. Well, I think it's their best game, and I also think it's probably the best game I've played since Auro. But time will tell if I'm right about that. But I think one thing about this game is I'm not convinced that we're at the optimal content set, basically. The content works okay right now, especially the cards are pretty fleshed out, I think, but I think more can be done with the enemies, maybe, and maybe maybe more can be done with. I've suggested to the dev before, but he thought it'd be too complex. But I was thinking, like, since this game is all about making patterns with your stones, like, maybe if it was possible to make, like, more passive and, like, long-term affecting patterns on the board, basically. But I don't know. It's just speculation, but I think there's a lot of unexplored territory here, basically. I think this game could benefit a lot from a bunch of iteration and expansion on the content, I think. Like, for example, this Titan here, like, I think this, I don't really know if this Titan pulls its weight, kind of. Like, and a lot of the times it just seems like it doesn't do much in the game. So this one, what it does is it moves 1 space per turn, and if it moves next to one of your stones, it kills it, and it protects its adjacent enemies from being killed. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like the serpent is a lot more dynamic than this guy, but I don't know. But yeah, I think there's a lot of room for kind of exploration there. And then also maybe, like, maybe it could stand to have some other layer of complexity. Like maybe you could do it with something like the passive patterns I was talking about, or maybe just some other terrain type or something like that. I don't know. But like Auro has like the terrain, the spells, and the monsters, layers of complexity, and I feel like, I'm afraid that maybe this one may be a little too, like, it might end up being a little too simple, maybe, in the end. A little too simple to sustain me for a long time, but I don't know. Time will tell. Right now, I'm really liking it. I think it flows well. Each move, like, your moves are, like, cool and surprising and do a lot of different things, like, and cool things and whatnot. And so, and then also this game has some has some longer arcs than Auro does too. Like maybe like in this particular match that you just watched, like one thing I did is I decided early on that since I have these two plague minotaurs down here and a bunch of other minotaurs pointing at um, these two temples, I decided to just leave them alone because I felt like I'd be better off just letting them stack here and leave me with less monsters to deal with on my other on these other temples, and also give me more freedom to kind of move on and off the temples to score extra points for capturing. Whereas if I had fought down here, I would have made them respawn in all kinds of crazy places, and maybe I wouldn't be able to hold enough temples to keep up with them at that point, basically. So there's kind of things like that, and like also like throughout the game, like if the game was longer, the monsters would win every time, basically, I think, because like they keep the same number of units, but your units are constantly dwindling like every time. Like of course you're spawning in, but I don't think you spawn in as fast as the Minotaurs kill your units, usually, I don't think. So it seems like usually by the end, the Minotaurs are overrunning the place, and you're just struggling to hold on to a couple of temples. So I think it's got some good long arcs on it, too. So yeah, all in all, I think it's a really promising title, and I'm excited to dig into it more and see how it develops. And I really recommend that any of you out there that have enjoyed their previous titles or have enjoyed Auro, I really recommend this one. I think it's gonna be pretty great. So yeah, thanks for watching. And in the future, actually, I'll probably do some more Auro style commentary videos, maybe with this one. We'll see. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed playing it. And see you next time.